Good afternoon, one and all. It is once again Ted the Speed Learner. We are headed back to Athens today. I had told you in a previous video that I was going to go back to Athens because the curator of the Long Nine Museum wanted me to videotape some extra stuff. We are headed there right now. I'm going to be putting my seatbelt on in just a second, as well as my little glasses here. I'm going to make a brief stop in Springfield, just long enough to get some ice in my cooler. After that, we're headed straight for Athens. And also, after this, you're going to see the 3 Petersburg signs. That's right, folks. There are 3 signs, 3 looking for Lincoln signs in Petersburg. You're going to see them today. That's right, folks. So I want you to stay tuned. You'll love everything you see, and I'll tell you more in a future video. This is once again Ted the Speed Learner. I am out here in Athens, Illinois at the Long Nine Museum. But I wanted to show you the side of this building. I had already shown you these signs down here in the last video that I did. But I wanted to show you this side because the Long Nine Museum actually is in 2 sections. And this is the first one here, as you can see. But as you can see, this brick part here is the second section of the Long Nine Museum. Now, of course, this is now a Masonic temple, but at the time, it was... Hang on, I'll show you this here. At the time, this was all one building. Now, this was at one time owned by Colonel Matthew Rogers, who served in the War of 1812. Okay? And sorry, I have to get my notes here. Oh! I may have to tell you more of this in a supplemental video. Okay? Colonel Rogers was born in Connecticut. He lived in New York for a while, and he actually served in the state militia in the War of 1812. In 1818, he and his family came to southern Illinois, and shortly thereafter he moved to the Sangamon region, which we're in right now, and he established his home a mile north of where we're at right now. In 1831 he started the construction of this building, and by 1832 it was finished. Okay, and in a little bit, hold on here, in a little bit I'm going to actually show you the attic part of this place. You need to notice the beams as I'm showing you this, because you can actually see some of the original beams to the attic of this place, as well as what they've done in the line of repairs to it. Okay, now this building has 2 floors. The first floor served as a dry goods store, and it served as the location of the Athens first post office. Now you got to keep in mind that originally Colonel Rogers, and I know all you're seeing right now is the building, Colonel Rogers had a post office prior to this, and he moved that post office from wherever it was to here, and he and his son were the first and second postmasters of the Athens post office, while Lincoln was the postmaster of New Salem. Okay. Now, the second floor of this building was used as a public room for early civic functions of the town. Now, it was in 1837 that Lincoln and the Long Nine, and you can do research on Lincoln and the Long Nine if you want, and I probably will post a supplemental video to that, met up here in the second story for a banquet. Alright, and you can learn about that later on. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the front of this building. There it is, people. Alright. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to the Salzenstein house. Now, Mr. Salzenstein, when Colonel Matthew Rogers died, bought what is now the Lincoln Long Nine Museum. And I'll go ahead and read you this plaque down here. It says, Louis Salzenstein's house. This house was built by Louis Salzenstein. Salzenstein was born in Germany, came to the United States in the early 1830s, and migrated to Illinois in 1843. His wife, Minnie, was the first German-speaking woman in the Sangamon region. Old Salty, as he was known, Louis Salzenstein owned the Rogers Building next door and operated a store there for decades. In 1865, he built the two-story brick building at the rear, which was used for a warehouse and social activities. He was a close friend of Abraham Lincoln. Salzenstein and his heirs lived in this house until about 1914, and this is the house they're referring to. Isn't that beautiful? But what I really need to tell you, before we get too much farther, because I'm going to show you some other houses here, is that Mr. Rogers had to sue to get his building back because it had been bought out by somebody else. And like I said, I'm going to discuss that in a supplemental video, because there's a lot of details to all this. But Mr. Rogers had to sue to get his building back because for 4 years no payments had been made to pay off the building. Now, this section right here, this brick building part here, that was built by Mr. Salzenstein back in 1848. So actually this part here, the white part, existed before this existed. So before 1948, this is all that was, from here on down this way, was all that was for this Rogers place. It was Salzenstein that actually built all of this brick part. Okay? And in a minute I'm going to take you guys down to see Dr. Mudd's house, and we'll tell you more about that in just a second. Good afternoon, everyone. It is once again Ted the Speed Learner, and I'm going to do as best as I can to show you this is the actual attic of the Long Nine Museum, as you can see here. I'll let you go ahead and take a look. I'm not going to climb all the way up in here, folks, because it is kind of, you know, just one of those things where I'm kind of afraid of heights, so I don't really do a lot of this height business. But as you can see, this is the actual attic itself. It's really nice looking. Well, kind of. But it is unique. This is about as big a history as you're ever going to see. Right here. Beautiful. Well, folks, you wanted to see history. About the biggest amount of history you'll ever see. Alright, I will tell you more in a little bit, so stay tuned. Alright, now we're at the house of Dr. William A. Mudd, circa 1860, and I'm going to get close here. There we go. It says this house was owned by Dr. William A. Mudd, 1847 to 1932. In the early 1900s, William Mudd was born near Lebanon, Kentucky. He graduated from medical school in Louisville, Kentucky in 1870 and came to Athens in 1883. Dr. Mudd was a country doctor in Athens for 45 years and was twice elected to mayor. William Mudd's father, Dr. Henry Luke Mudd, was born in 1809, also near Lebanon, Kentucky, and was a cousin and childhood schoolmate of Abraham Lincoln, according to county historian R.D. Miller. A distant cousin of William Mudd was Dr. Samuel A. Mudd, who attended the broken leg of John Wilkes Booth, Lincoln's assassin. And this is the actual house that Dr. William Mudd stayed in. Alright, I'm going to tell you more in just a minute. Stay tuned. Okay, what you're seeing right now is the site of Jonathan Dunn's saw and grist mill. Now, I know it doesn't exist today, but I'm going to go ahead and show you this. Okay, this here says Jonathan Dunn's steam-powered circular saw and grist mill. A steam-powered circular saw and grist mill was built at this site by Athens resident Jonathan Dunn in about 1831. The mill was capable of making 20 to 25 barrels of flour per day, or sawing 1,000 to 2,000 feet of lumber per day. Dunn operated the mill for a year or two before selling it to William Strawbridge and Jacob Croft. They later added a distillery, which was operated using escape steam from the mill's engine. Water from the engine's boiler was obtained from a stream that ran through this area. Was obtained from a stream that ran through this area. Okay, and I'm going to read you a bit more on this. The mill was constructed by Athens resident Jonathan Dunn in about 1831. Okay. This sawmill was an early steam-powered circular saw having two blades, one above the other, which made it possible to saw larger diameter logs. The sawmill was also equipped with a winch mechanism which could draw logs from 100 feet away up to the circular sawmill to be sawn. Okay. Now, of course, Mr. Dunn, he only operated this mill for about a couple of years. Let's see. And then of course, he sold it to William Strawbridge and Jacob Croft. Alright, Strawbridge later operated this mill by himself for a number of years. A stream through this area provided water for the steam engine's boiler. As you can see here, there are a couple of plaques I'd like for you to take a look at real quick. These are World War I veterans. And I'll go ahead and I'll show you this as well. Beautiful stuff. And this was erected in the memory of Delamott. And there's a podium over here. From what the curator of the Long Nine told me, there was a gentleman that used to stand up here and used to tell the story of the city of Athens on this very platform. And he said that this street, Mill Street, used to be a stream. Of course, they've all changed that now, but at one time there was a stream that went right through here. And there you have it. Alright, I'm going to go across the street here and I'm going to show you this house right over here in just a moment, so stay tuned. Now, I know it's kind of hard to believe, but this used to be called the Banks Hall Tavern. And it says, portions of this house include the remnants of the tavern hotel built by the Banks Hall around 1830. The tavern was on the stage route between Springfield, Athens, New Salem, and Beardstown. Abraham Lincoln occasionally stayed at this tavern. Banks Hall's wife was of the Francis family. Lincoln and his stays here probably became acquainted with Simeon Francis, editor of the Springfield Sangamo Journal newspaper, and later one of Lincoln's political friends. Banks Hall's father, Abner Hall, helped arrange the early survey plot of Athens in September 1831. Banks Hall was married to a daughter of Calvin Francis, and she had a large part in overseeing the tavern's activities. It was likely through this Francis family connection that Lincoln became acquainted with Simeon Francis, editor of the Sangamo Journal newspaper. Okay, it was Abner Hall and Harry Riggin who arranged for the early survey of Athens in 1831. The survey was performed by Reuben Harrison. This is the site of the Overstreet Hale flouring mill and sawmill. A two-story brick steam-powered flouring mill and sawmill was built at this site by John R. Overstreet and Alexander Hale in 1856. A stream through this area provided water for the steam engine's boiler. The mill was operated for decades, doing a fine business until it burned in 1897. The church parsonage now here was subsequently constructed on the site. John R. Overstreet was a grandson of the Revolutionary War John Overstreet and nephew of Athens founder, the Reverend John Overstreet. Okay, we have just a bit more information on this. The Reverend Overstreet was also in the milling business at an early date in the Athens area. In 1829, he helped install and operate an early mill drawn by horses. Water for the steam engine's boiler was obtained from a stream that passed through this site. And I'm just presuming that this here is the actual house. I'm going to try, there's a lot of trees here, but I'll try to get a video of the house itself. A little bit of clearing here. This is apparently the house that was built here after the fire. And there you go. Alright, I'll tell you more in just a minute. Stay tuned. This is the Alexander Hale house. This house was built by Athens resident Ezra Isleworth in about 1860. It was constructed of brick with 13-inch thick interior walls. In 1874, the house was acquired by Alexander Hale, who added 5 additional rooms onto the house's west end. For a number of years, Alexander Hale operated a flouring mill and sawmill across the street. In 1920, one of Hale's children, Lowell Hale Keecher, purchased the house and removed the addition to return the house to its 1860 appearance. Now give me a second here, folks. I'm on a hill. I'm not as young as I used to be, but this is the actual house itself. And as you can see, right across the street would have been the actual mill. Alright, there's a couple more things I need to show you, and then I will finish this up. I will tell you more in a future video, or tell you more in just a minute, so stay tuned. Ormo Clark's double log cabin. In 1819, Ormo Clark constructed on this site a double log cabin, the first structure in what would become the town of Athens. One side of the cabin he used as a residence, and the other side he used as a blacksmith shop. In 1821, Clark sold the cabin and adjoining land to the Reverend John Overstreet, who soon converted the blacksmith shop into a store. During the Civil War years, John R. Overstreet, Reverend Overstreet's nephew, owned a 2-story hotel on the corner just north of here. Besides owning the hotel, John R. Overstreet was also co-owner of the nearby Hale Overstreet flour sawmill. And as you can see, there is no log cabin here today, but that's where it was. Alright, I'll tell you more in just a minute. Stay tuned. Early Athens pottery works. This is from the 1830s to the 1850s. This site was the location of early Athens pottery making. In the 1830s through the 1850s, clays found here were used in making the pottery, which was occasionally used as barter when currency was scarce. Known operators of pottery factories here included William Royal, John Shepherd, William and Barnett Ramsey, and John W. Frankleton. Some of these pottery makers were also previously involved in the Cotton Hill Pottery Factory in Springfield. Descendants of Athens pottery makers migrated to Galena, Illinois, and the Oregon Territory, where they also established early pottery industries. And this is where you'd find it today. Alright, I will tell you more in a future video, so stay tuned. Good afternoon, one and all. It is once again Ted the Speed Learner, and I'd like to tell you that I'm in Petersburg, Illinois, and you can see the Rexall drugstore, the State Farm Insurance, that right there, the courthouse, and this. Yes, another Looking for Lincoln sign. I'm going to read you this in just a second, so stay tuned. I thought I'd give you guys a quick view of the Petersburg courthouse. Take a look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Nice little tourist spot. You even have a picnic table over here. Now, isn't that just wonderful? Alrighty. Now, here's the key. You say, well, we have 2 more Lincoln signs to find. You're absolutely right. You can see here, got a lot of funky little buildings over here. But we also have, believe it or not, 2 Abraham Lincoln signs. Lincoln the Surveyor here. And you can see that there's a lot of bricks over here with a lot of names. I'm not going to videotape all those today because we're here to get Lincoln signs. But if you'll take a look right over here, you'll see the 3rd and final sign. That's right, it's right across the street from this one right here. I'm going to read both of these to you in just a moment, so stay tuned. I thought I'd get this one final thing before I go flying out of Petersburg here. You can take a look. It's beautiful, isn't it? This is a war memorial. Got benches. You can actually see the symbols of all the military branches here. It says, at the end of the day, our nation still stands. Sacred to the memory of all those in the armed forces who have so generously and faithfully served the United States of America. For God and country. Grateful tribute to all men and women of Menard County who served in the armed forces in the past, present, and future wars or conflicts. This was dedicated in September 2002. You can see flags up here. And we'll just take one more little Petersburg honoring Abraham Lincoln. Alright. I will tell you all more in a future video, so stay tuned.